the Wacky World of Work. I'm James Tehrani, your host, and today on the program we have a very special guest. His name is Bill George, and he is a current Harvard Business School professor, and he is the former CEO of Medtronic, a medical device company. We'll be discussing the updated version of his book, Discover Your True North, which I believe comes out this week, and we'll be talking a little bit about what happens when leaders' morals head south. Thank you for joining me today, Bill.
Thanks, James. Good to be with you.
Great. So for the people who haven't read the book, can you give me a little bit of an idea of what you mean by True North?
Well, True North is your most deeply held beliefs, the values you live by, and the principles you lead by. And so it's really the essence of who you are. Who are you as a person? And it's, your center. It's like your moral compass. It's the thing inside you.
Why is that so important for a leader? You kind of talk about the myth of how leaders are born. You don't believe that. How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, first of all, it's really important for a leader because to be a good leader, you have to be a good human being. And it's hard to say you're a great leader and a horrible human being. So this is the essence of who you are as a human being. And to discover your leadership, you have to have a deep understanding of yourself, the challenges you face, how you're going to deal with crises, pressures, and things like that. And so that's what I think is the essence of getting to be a leader and how you become one. And so I think it's a combination of the qualities you're born with, but then you have to develop. It's no different than a cellist who's going to Carnegie Hall. You just show up. You have to practice every day. And I think people need to practice their leadership every day, have experiences in diverse settings, and learn about themselves and how they respond. Learn about their leadership and correct, make improvements, do it better the next time. And so the earlier you start that process, the better leader you're going to be.
Now, a lot of the people who will be watching this show are in the human resources or human resources related field, so they're recruiting for executive leaders. What are some of the qualities that you would look for if you were interviewing for a leader, and what are some of the questions you've posed to people or been posed to about during the interview process?
Far and away, number one is authenticity. Are they genuine people? Are they good in their skin? Are they real? And do they come across who they are? There's some free-floating ideas about faking it to make it, or pretending you have charisma, or putting out a good impression for an interviewer. That's a good way to get in trouble and hire the wrong person. You need to know a person's values, who you're dealing with, and what their character is. And when you can find that out, and you have a pretty good sense of that, then you say, is there a good cultural fit with the company and the job? I think all too often we look at resumes rather than looking at the person behind the resume, and that's where big mistakes are made. I've made those mistakes myself, so I know.
So you interviewed 125 leaders for your book, which I think is very impressive. What was the most unusual, or maybe not shocking, but what answer did you get that you were not expecting at all during the process?
Well, we asked people about their traits and characteristics, and they wouldn't talk about that. They want to talk about their life experiences, their life story. We never expected how important that was going to be, where they come from, who their parents were, where they grew up, the environment, the challenges they faced. And we hit upon the thing that was the most important, and that's the impact of the greatest crucible of their life, the most challenging experience they've ever had, and how they framed that. And the great leaders framed those experiences not as victims. They didn't just stuff them and forget about them. They actually used them as opportunities for growth. And in the new book, we talk about an emerging concept called post-traumatic growth, of how people are using challenging experiences early in life to grow as leaders and as human beings, and how they share those. They share their weaknesses, they share their vulnerabilities with other people, and that they connect. You don't connect in the head, you connect in the heart. And those are some things we learned in the most recent set of interviews. We interviewed another 47 people for Discover Your True North. So it's, in the essence, it tains a lot of the ideas of True North, but it's basically a new book with about 60% new content.
Wow. Well, when I was reading the book, I got sort of the impression that leadership is sort of easy if you take the moral route, and there's kind of a religious undertone to the book. Was that intentional?
I wouldn't say religious. I say many people are religious and we share their experiences. Some people are not, and we share those experiences as well. But if you don't have a underpinning of beliefs and kind of a grounding, it's very easy to get pulled off course. Very easy to get caught up in money, fame, and power. So I think when you're a recruiting person, if they're only looking at how much money they're going to make, what their title is, you probably got the wrong person. You want a person that's committed to the mission of your company, to the values of the company. There's a good fit with that mission and values. They feel passionate about that. They have the compassion to deal with people. Far more important than where they went to school, what their resume says, or any of those things.
Okay, well, you actually talk about some of those leadership examples in the book, like a Rajat Gupta.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a certain point where you could tell things were going astray with him?
I must say that this is one where I got fooled. Normally I can pick up people that are off base. He had me fooled. He was a good person. He got pulled off course. I think he never resolved his need for financial security, going all the way back to childhood where he was orphaned at 18. And I have great empathy for what he went through and being very poor and having to raise his sister, and admiration for what he did and taking from that background, rising up to such an extraordinary performance through McKinsey. But somehow he decided it was more important to be a billionaire than it was to follow his moral compass. And he got pulled off course, and he never got back, and it was too late. And so it's a tragedy. He's still in jail now for 2 years, and it's very sad because a good person that got pulled off course. So it wasn't like he was some kind of evil person all along.
No, I think everybody has their good sides and their bad side.
Right.
When you were a leader at Medtronic, were there decisions you made that you thought later, I wish I would have done something differently? Do you have an example of that?
Well, I had an opportunity to do a major acquisition right about 4 months after I became CEO of a company called Symed that was bought by Boston Scientific. Reasonable price, all that. I got talked out of it by my colleagues. And I think I was a little bit naive about thinking we could do everything internally. We should have done the deal. And so that was one that I made a mistake. I also made a mistake in some hiring people late in my tenure. Hired a chief information officer based on his resume. He was like central casting for a CIO. And looked at his resume, it was perfect. But I didn't check out his values. Didn't check out whether he was passionate about being part of Medtronic with a mission of restoring people to full life and health. Turned out he wasn't. He was more concerned about money, things like private parking places, private planes, deals we had at Medtronic. And so he disappeared after 3 days and was just as well.
Wow. So obviously CEO compensation is a hot topic these days. And I think people don't realize, what kind of pressures the CEO is under and so forth, and whether they deserve that large salary or the bonuses or whatever. What do you think people should take from the CEO pay? Should we look at it as a problem, or should we look at it as we don't quite understand the shoes you're in at the top of the ladder?
Well, both. The shoes you're in for a CEO day is much tougher than when I was CEO back in the 90s. I can tell you, where CEOs were venerated back then, today they're looked at as bums oftentimes. It's not fair because we have a great group of CEOs. I think CEO pay is out of control, but it's driven by how much money people are making in other walks of life, particularly in hedge funds, private equity, and the options they have. But I think we're not going to easily correct that problem. No matter how many rules and regs you pass, it can be hard to get that genie back in the bottle. The real issue is elevating the pay of the first level people, the people on the firing line, people doing the work, the people in production lines, the innovators in the labs, the people serving people. They're way underpaid today. And I think we put too big an investment into middle management and into consultants. And if we trim out the middle management consultants and put a lot more money into the first level people. A guy like Mark Bertolini at Aetna did this. Now you realize he's running call centers and pays of clerks, and he's paying a minimum of $16 an hour, and he can show you how that pays off. So I think the idea that you won't give your employees benefits, pensions, something the activists are pushing for, I think they're dead wrong. I think we have to elevate the pay of people doing the work, and that will take care of part of the equality problem. I'd like to see CEO pay come down, but I'm not optimistic it's going to happen.
Very interesting. I'd like you to, can you tell the audience about, I think this is one of the most interesting stories I read in the book, was about a regular worker who worked on heart valves. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very fascinating and interesting example of leadership. Can you tell us about that?
That's a woman named Trin, who was from Laos and legally immigrated American, had been about 5 years, worked for Medtronic, the top worker in the plant. I went out to visit the plant because they're heavily backlogged and asked her to show me why she could produce twice as many valves as anyone else. She wouldn't even look down at her bench. She wouldn't look down. She just looked up. She said, Mr. George, and she said with a passion in her eyes, let me tell you, my job is to make heart valves save people's lives. And I make 1,000 valves a year. If one of those valves is affected, someone's going to die. And I could never live with that. Now, to you, 99% quality is very, very good. Sure. Not acceptable for me. She said, we don't need inspectors on this line. I help all the other workers. I train them. I show them how to make excellent valves. And I remember she concluded by saying, you know, when I go home at night, when I'm thinking about those 5,000 people walking around in the world today who are leading full, healthy life because of the valves I made. So you see the passion for the mission. And here's a woman, no direct reports. In those days, it's 20 years ago, she made about $22 an hour. But I can tell you, she was a role model of an authentic leader, leading from her position, not from any position power, but from her passion for the mission and capability. And that's the kind of work we need for everyone.
And that kind of fits into your philosophy about the we versus the I.
Yes, definitely. She's definitely a we leader. And I think too many baby boomers have been I leaders. And I'm writing a lot about the millennials. In many ways, I'm writing the new book for the millennials to say this is much more of a we generation that's coming up. They're more interested in service. They're more interested in having an impact. They want to do it now. They don't want to wait in line for bureaucracy or 10 years to get the right kind of leadership job. They want to do it now, and if they don't, they'll form their own companies. So I think big bureaucratic corporations are going to fail. And the human resource department needs to stop focusing on systems and procedures and really focusing on how can we enhance the environment so people can do their work and give them opportunities now and make everyone a leader instead of worrying about how do you get up from level 4 to 5 to 6 and kind of get rid of that. Focus on people doing the work.
Interesting. Well, in your book, you ask a lot of questions, and I was wondering if I could ask you how you would answer one of your questions.
Sure. Good idea.
All right. So on page 178, you say, what do you do to ensure that you stayed grounded professionally? In what ways do your family life, personal life, friendship, and community life add to or detract from your personal life? Can you answer that question?
Bingo. That's the right question to ask. I think leadership is challenging many, many times, and it's a long journey. I'm still growing as a leader. I think everyone has to continue growing. And to do that, you have to be able to sustain your leadership in spite of the pressures, in spite of all the seductions of money, fame, and power that pull you away from your true north. How do you sustain your leadership, James? And I think you need a series of practices. I recommend everyone have a practice of at least 20 minutes a day, an introspective practice, a reflective practice where they go off, they meditate, they pray, they keep a journal, they talk to a loved one, they go for a jog, they take a long run, something to clear the head so you're not in this incessant 24/7 mode. And that's the essence of mindfulness, of being mindful as a leader. And I think that keeps you grounded. And you keep remembering where I came from, who I am, what my responsibilities are. My responsibilities are not to myself, but to the organization. It's my job to ensure the future of these people and to do my job so that they have a future. And that's the job of any leader, is to ensure the well-being of their people. And if you do that, it's going to come back to you many, many times. If you don't do that, you're going to have a foreshortened career. And I think a lot of that is having an integrated life. Are you the same person at work, at home, in your personal life, and in your communities? And I think having an integrated life is the mark of a good leader. The idea that you can work 100 hours a week and sustain that is nonsense. So I really need to have all these aspects of your life going.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'd like to thank Bill George for joining me today. Check out his book that comes out this week, Discover Your True North. Excellent read. If you have a question about the program, you can always email me at editors@workforce.com, or you can tweet to me at @WorkforceJames. Like I always say, whatever works. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James, for having me on the program.